So welcome to our discussions today, ladies and gentlemen, from wherever you are. Today we would like to have a discussion on uh, postponed democracy, unpacking the perennial delays of general elections in South Sudan. And before I invite the speakers that we have lined up today, just a brief discussion on why this webinar. Since independence, Africa's youngest democracy, that is South Sudan, has repeatedly postponed its elections. 2015, 2018, and most recently 2024. And we were told now that it's been rescheduled to 2026, December 2022. But again, based on the history of postponement of these elections, observers and people interested in elections and governance and democracy are a bit worried that the postponement of these elections continue to fuel conflicts and intensify elite contestation, as well as continue to polarize the country. So today we have come together, bringing experts from the region, just to have a discussion, reflect, and have an honest conversation about the situation, the consequences of such postponement, and what is the future of South Sudan in terms of elections. And we hope that these discussions will be able to make us appreciate better the root causes and political incentives behind these repeated postponement of these elections. Also, probably have a discussion and understand the impact of such delays on the democratic gains for South Sudan, but also ask ourselves then what are some of the actionable strategies that we may need to employ as actors in the space, and what solidarity and collaborative measures we can put in place to help us appreciate the complexities of the situation in South Sudan. To start us off, I would like then to invite Dr. Sarah Birete, who is the chairperson of the East and Horn of Africa Domestic Election Observation Network, that is EHON, to come in and just give us a brief overview of the democratic situation in the region. So over to you, Dr. Sarah. Dr. Sarah, if you can hear me, the floor is yours. I think we're having a technical itch. I don't know whether, Dr. Sarah, you can hear me. All right. Probably we could come back to Dr. Sarah later, but I'd like to call on James Okon, who is in South Sudan and is a member of EHON, to probably give us the state of election democracy in South Sudan. James, can you hear me? Confirm if you can hear me.
Yeah, come again. I was in.
All right. Yes, James. James, what is the situation like in South Sudan in terms of preparations towards these elections?
Okay, well, thank you, Marcos, and thank you, the panelists, the chairperson of EON. And Yakani, if it is around or not, I am not seeing him. Okay, the situation in South Sudan really is worrying. When you look at the beginning of 2011, when the constitution of South Sudan was funded, it was not funded on democracy and good governance. I think it was a few people who sit in the hotel come up with the constitution, and that constitution actually led to the crisis of 2013 because it was not funded on democracy. And when you look at the situation in South Sudan now, seeing the the extension of the roadmap and RCS to 2026, until now, you see there were no any progress that has come out that will see the tangible that, oh, there is moving toward the election. There are those delayment that is happening. And this happening from the individuals, leaders, and politicians. That's which actually don't want election to happen to make them accountable to the citizen. So they have this delayment that's creating confusion among the citizen, among the state, among what, for them to continue to be in power for long and loot the resources of the country. Because when people go for election, they will be accountable for the citizen to the citizen. So, but they don't want to be accountable. They don't want to be transparency. So they create conflict around, and then now people don't actually go for election, so they continue looting, corruption, and all these things. Like now, the country really a bit at the war. When you look at the Upper Nile State, which is another region, now as we are talking, there are a lot of fighting going on, a lot of bombing of civilian and all these things, displacement. So there's sometimes you ask yourself, how can we really reach for election? Delay happened. This is the first time of the delay of the election. So how can we go for election on all these things? How can the environment allow people actually to go for the election if there are conflicts all around the corner, whether in the region, central Equatoria, whether in Upper Nile State, whether in Barkadal, there are tribal fighting, there are government fighting militia, there are what fighting militia. So the situation actually for election in South Sudan, I will put it forward, is not clear because we are still creating a lot of crises, a lot of issues in South Sudan. So it becomes not clear actually, as you are hearing that there is fighting. Now, there was some peace in Nairobi, which is called Itumaini. Itumaini now is not going on because these politicians, these individuals, they create crisis, they look for crisis, they create the crisis, and then all the process that can bring peace, can bring harmony, can bring coexistence among the community, they destroy it so that they continue looting the resources of the country. And that's the situation. The situation, the country actually, you see like it's normal in Juba, but the country is like going to the war again because the fighting is continue going on. So that's what I want.
Thank you, James. And you raised fundamental issues, especially about the roadmap towards these elections, and especially and some of those initiatives that have been formed to address the situation. I think we'll come back to that. But now that I have Dr. Sarah online, Dr. Sarah, I would like you to probably give us an overview of the current state of democracy in our region. Where do you see, especially focusing on some significant setbacks that we are seeing in the region, and how then those setbacks are most likely to replicate in the countries that are yet to have the elections? We have Tanzania coming up in October this year. Then we have Uganda January of next year. We have Burundi also this year. Then we hopefully having Somalia and Ethiopia, and then South Sudan. Could you then probably just a brief overview of the current state of democracy in the region? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marcus, fellow panelists and the viewers on the call. Glad to be speaking on this meeting and the situation of South Sudan elections, but also the political context for the East African community. To summarize a bit of the political context, we have, countries like Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, characterized by enforced disappearances, torture, trumped up charges against opposition with leading opposition candidates. Tundu Lissu in Tanzania, Dr. Kizza Besigye in Uganda facing treason charges. And you have a situation really for elections in these three major East African countries that is contestable. When you look at the rule of law index for East Africa, when you score the countries that were sampled in the rule of law index by the World Justice Report for 2024, you have a general decline in the rule of law generally for all the 142 countries scored. There was a 72% decline globally in the rule of law promotion in these countries. The decline is worse in sub-Saharan Africa, that includes Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, and Uganda. Rwanda was scored at 40%, Kenya with an improvement at 63%, Tanzania at 47%, and you have Uganda at 45%. The majority countries scored below 50%. That means that we do not have average conditions for rule of law in the country, and this puts at threat the civil and political rights that then translate into citizen participation in elections. And once you have the civil and political rights of citizens threatened, it means that there will be apathy, low turnout in elections, and generally low participation of citizens in their governance. And when you go to the latest report on Mo Ibrahim Africa Index on governance for Africa, that scored mainly the broad areas of security and safety, rule of law and justice, accountability and transparency, and generally corruption. You have backsliding generally over the 10 years analysis for the report that was released for 2024. Kenya scored as number 10 in the Africa Mo Ibrahim Governance Index, Rwanda number 14, Tanzania number 15, Uganda 26, and you have South Sudan at 54. So this generally paints a gloomy picture in as far as the political context, matters of governance, protection of fundamental rights and freedoms in the East African region are concerned. Specifically for the South Sudan, the country that we are discussing on the spot, I want to talk briefly on the interim leadership and why it has failed to conduct elections. I know that James has expounded on this with the latest updates. But if you look at the comprehensive peace agreement that had given the leadership of South Sudan the interim 4 years, those interim 4 years had an action plan. And the key activities that should have been done included the new constitution, conducting the national census so that you are able to know the number of citizens in this new country and prepare for elections and those that are eligible to vote, stabilization of the army, and then conducting elections. These were the 4 major activities that the interim government should have done in 4 years. It has now stretched over 10 years of interim leadership, and still the 4 activities are not done. So as James comes on together with the other colleagues of South Sudan, the areas for interrogation should be, why has the interim government that should have done these 4 key activities in 4 years failed to deliver on all the 4 activities for over 10 years? And do we still think that they can deliver on these key activities in preparation for elections or not? So, Marcus, these are my brief opening remarks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah. I think that brings us to, you raised quite important, and it's good that you've reminded us of the 4 fundamental areas of concern and tasks that are assigned to the interim government. So, James, just back to you again. Now, it's a fact that the elections in South Sudan have now been postponed, not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, but 5 times. And in light, and as Dr. Sarah said, conducting election was one of the key deliverables of the interim government. Now, if we reflect on the postponement of these elections, 2 questions that I would like you to reflect on. One, what are some of the political obstacles that are at play? Do you think there are political reasons behind the postponement of these elections? Number 2, are these delays strategic? Are these delays genuine? And when these delays occur, then who benefits from these delays? James, over to you. James, you could unmute.
Sudan.
Yeah, please proceed.
Hello? You are getting me?
Yes, James, you're very clear.
Marcus?
Yes, you're very clear.
Okay.
Please proceed. Yes.
I was saying when it was said that Sarah said what make actually South Sudan not to conduct the election and not to implement what's supposed to be done in 4 years. As I said before, South Sudan is South Sudan. Sorry, somebody was interrupting me also. South Sudan really is struggling a lot between the political, individual leadership, political ambition, and the challenges of establishing a state of democracy. Peace and election are seen as a threat. You know, peace and election in South Sudan are seen as a threat by the certain leader within and outside South Sudan. The interim government, who might be willing to use violence and postponement of the election to maintain their interests. The latest postponement in 2026, the government has come out clearly, the transitional government has come out clearly by saying the postponement is due to lack of implementation of some article in the RCS, and one is a constitutional making process. The permanent constitutional making process is one of the conditions in the peace agreement. That's without permanent constitution, there is no election. So in 2024, people are supposed to go for election, but because of the leadership, they want the delayment to happen so that they don't go for election for accountability. They misplaced the priority. Instead of dealing with the constitution making, they had now went on and fund the election commission. And the priority is supposed to be the constitution because these are preconditions. That is one, is for them to say that, okay, this in the agreement, this is the condition. Why are we going for election? We did not implement it. So they make it tactically to delay the election. Number 2, the security arrangement, the integration of forces has not been completed. Even some was not trained. This is another thing also, because you cannot go for election without a unifying force. Because when you look at South Sudan, every faction has its own army. So you cannot go for election without unifying those forces. Number 3, what they put on is a census. The census, the population of South Sudan, they did not demarcate the border, the constituency, the whole, this thing is not there. And when you look at the constitution of South Sudan 2011 as amended, did not capture the election process well. They just put in the amendment that the election in South Sudan will happen after the permanent constitution, and did not in the current constitution did not lay out the election process, what is the term of the president, and all. They did not even do it as amended. So it will become another obstacle. But unwillingness, it is made actually tactically by the leader to continue looting, and they don't want to get accountability by the people of South Sudan. We know very well election is a key to shape democracy, provide a new government with a clear public endorsement and mandate to take forward the plan and provide the opportunity to begin institutionalism and the infrastructure and democratic government. But in South Sudan, people don't want that. They will make whatever they want, then to continue moving on forward. So election really in South Sudan, who is benefiting? When we come, who is benefiting? Who is benefiting is those who are benefiting from this status quo often include certain political leaders, faction, like those movement who may want to maintain their power and authority without a pressure on competitive electoral process. They delay election. This group can continue to influence policies and governance without the accountability. That's come with electoral method. And that's what they don't want. They don't want to go for elections because there are electoral process and mandate that is going to be given them for accountability and transparency. So they will continue manipulating, influencing the policy actors within the government and military to accommodate. They will continue creating problems. They will continue avoiding to be, scrutinized, and this is the thing that is going on in South Sudan. But also we look at the election also. It can create a lot of issues if the leaders are not put in the right way. That is really going to create a lot of issues. So that's what I want to say, Marcus, and I will come back. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that is interesting. That the submission that you're making is that these delays benefit the ruling elite. So there's a sort of a capture of the democratic space in South Sudan, and it's done for selfish interests, so that then they want to avoid accountability. But let me bring in Dr. Sarah. Sarah, if you listen very keenly to James, James is South Sudanese. He works in the election space. He's made very emotive description of events, and of course, as you can see, he says that these are selfish people. They don't want to be accountable to the people, hence they don't want to seek fresh mandate, given that, as you said earlier on, this was an interim arrangement. So the question I'm asking Dr. Sarah is that, given the situation in South Sudan, how else can we hold these leaders accountable? If you look at some of the reasons that they gave in postponing the elections, there was incomplete preparations. For example, census hadn't been done, which was a condition for the peace in the peace agreement. Then the permanent constitution is not yet finished. Then, of course, the registration of political parties. There are serious security concerns in South Sudan. Then there are also economic challenges. Now, we are not even so sure that they will hold elections in December of 2026. So how else can we hold these people accountable in the absence of a democratic process that either confirms them or sends them home? Over to you, Dr. Sarah.
Well, democracy, like by its simple Greek definition, is a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. The people in power are comfortable enjoying power without legitimacy, without seeking it from the people. And they are not yet ready to get out of that comfort zone. If the people were putting up enough demand for the implementation of these items, number 1 to 5, it should by now be resolved and South Sudan could hold elections. Because even today, if you told the government, even the 2-year postponement won't work unless you have a national census or a credible voter register. Because how do you, aggregate the number of citizens or those eligible to vote in a country? If you don't have registration of political parties, who are the actors that are going to participate in elections? If you don't sort out the professionalization of the army is still working in factions. It is a faction A versus faction B, receiving different command orders. How do you stabilize the country? I don't know whether the vice president is still under house arrest and the minister for energy, who is the wife. So how do you prepare for elections? It was postponed for 2 years, but what activities are going on in the country in line with preparation for elections? What are the minimum requirements for South Sudan to be able to hold elections? Even if they don't write a permanent constitution, can they make a proper electoral law to enable people to participate? Because the interim government has failed to do what the comprehensive peace agreement commanded them to do. So I think it's up to the people of South Sudan, through national dialogue or a national conference, to aggregate their demands and come up with a minimum agenda for holding elections, plus responsible parties to implement. If you take a decision that there should be registration of people who are aged 18 years and above, who should register those citizens and where is the source of funding? If you take a decision for unification of the armies, plus retirement route for those who wish to continue in politics, and the generals that should retire that are political, what are the steps and who is responsible, plus funding? If you take a decision for registering political parties, can you put up a register of parties? Can you put up a law on political parties that creates a register of parties, that creates requirements for entities to be recognized as parties, that creates a minimum code of conduct for political parties, plus the person to implement, and serious observers? Because the other route why the comprehensive peace agreement failed is that the observers were conflicted. I know that Uganda was one of the guarantors of the peace agreement, but as we talk, we have had our troops in South Sudan for about 5 years protecting one faction or one of the parties of the peace agreement. So we are no longer guarantor. We are a participant in the conflict as a country. So who will be the guarantors for that minimum agenda? Can we look at the role of the religious groups, given their neutrality element and impartiality in political power? Who else has vested invisible power? I know that IGAD has been trying to play a role. Maybe we need to hear from James. What has been the impact of IGAD in the South Sudan peace process, and why is it that you are still where you were 10 years ago as a country? What can be done differently? So this is what the people of South Sudan need to demand, need to see, with an actionable agenda that should be implemented in the 2 years of postponement. Otherwise, we shall get to the next 2 years, we shall still have a country that is not ready to hold elections, because elections need a framework. They need security as a pillar of governance in a country. They need neutral entities, electoral commission, register of parties, and other entities that are able to preside over as midwife for democracy, for a rebirth of democracy for this new country. So we need a practical action plan with implementers and observers to make sure that there is neutrality, but also there is movement in the critical actions that need to be done for preparation of elections in South Sudan. I submit.
Thank you very much. And I think you've raised a critical point, the role of regional bodies, and you've singled out IGAD in particular as part of a framework that could be employed as an accountability option, but also the guarantors that are slowly also being just observers. But James, I would like to come back to you if you can hear me, James. Could you then give us your own feedback, because you live in the country there, you work in the country, you interact with the people. Do the people want elections? Because then you said earlier on that the postponement benefits primarily the political and the elite class. But the people of South Sudan, do they want elections? Are they afraid that if these elections were to be held, the country would return to war, given the threats to peace in South Sudan? The way we see peace situation in South Sudan, are they looking forward to these elections, or they would rather not disturb what appears to be working? Over to you, James.
Thank you, Marcus. And I want to come back to Dr. Sarah about issue of IGAD. When you look at the IGAD, is the regional body, which actually was the mediator of the peace talk in Addis Ababa, and grantor. One of the grantor of the peace talk in Addis Ababa is Sudan and Uganda. These two were really the two grantor of the peace agreement. And now Sudan is at war with itself. Sudan is at war with itself, which becomes difficult for them to be the grantor to make sure the implementation of 2000 peace agreement is being done in letter and in spirit. That becomes difficult. Again, when you look at Uganda, which is the grantor for peace talk in South Sudan, again, Uganda become a party to the conflict. And as people know, that Uganda become a party of the conflict because they are the ones sending the military to South Sudan, supporting SPDF against the opposition, supporting government and doing what, and at the same time they are grantor. How can a grantor be a party to the conflict? And that becomes a very complicated issue here, because Uganda become a part of conflict in South Sudan, because the government of Uganda, I think they are benefiting a lot from South Sudan looting resources. They are getting a lot. So they don't want this complication. They don't want peace actually to reign. They don't want election to be conducted also. Yes, there are IGAD invoice, which is always active in South Sudan. But when you look at them, accountability becomes difficult, because you see them only, they are giving technical assistance, they are giving capacity building, they are giving, but to account actually the party, to account them become difficult. You see, you will see the IGAD head of state, they have met, but the resolution does not actually pressurize South Sudan to implement the peace agreement chapter by chapter. So then there is jump and on. The question of South Sudan, whether the South Sudanese people are ready for election. The South Sudanese people are very much ready for election. And you see them on the street talking about election because they are ready to change the leadership. They are ready to bring their representative to the parliament who can champion their issues, who can bring them development, who can bring them peace, who can bring them whatever they want. But now it's become obstacle is here because of the elites that are in the government, the elite, the pure elite, they don't want those change. Because if this change come, now become also accountability and transparency, they will be all accountable for whatever they do. So they want to make sure that they continue moving in those power, so that what is going on either will get them, they have gone from this world, or will get them, will get their children, they don't care. So they are looking for themselves here. Yes, again, the election cycle actually, peace and conflict dynamic can be heavily manipulated. Politically actors may exploit existing tension, the existing tension and grievances among different ethnic and regional groups to support and distract from their shortcoming. They can manipulate that election. They can make tension that is existing, like what is happening in South Sudan now. They can use it actually to distract their shortcoming. Some factors may utilize fear-based tactics, threatening its ability to rally their base and justify action that support to suppress the opposition. And that is what is happening currently in South Sudan. Now they are creating this tension, suppressing opposition and all these things. And also in South Sudan, the lack of credible electoral process, as I said, there is nowhere in the current constitution, the election, the process of election, the what. Yet they came out with what they call legal framework. I don't know where did they drive that legal framework, because it should connect to the constitution article, which is the article say that only the election will be done after permanent constitution. Now they have a legal framework, which is not really capturing what is wanted. When you look at the legal framework, the three South Sudan have 10 states plus 3 administrative. So when you look at the legal framework, the 3 administrative is not in a legal framework. The legal framework is giving president a power to nominate, to appoint 10% of the parliamentarian into the parliament. So it's really a worry issue also in South Sudan. And all this electoral process, which is not credible, will lead to increase in violence and rival group by the political power. The leading cycle of conflict that are both challenges and a strategic tool for certain leaders. This manipulation of the peace and conflict can undermine the prospect for long-term stability and democracy in South Sudan. And that's what I want to say. This can be manipulation. This manipulation of peace and conflict undermine actually the long-term stability and democracy in South Sudan. So the election, if not well managed, South Sudan will go back to war. If it is well managed and well taken care of, and it lay out to, and then people came up with what we call alternative dispute resolution in election. If election happened today, which court are we going to handle the cases of violence, the cases of wrecking, the cases of what? It's not there. There is no court in South Sudan which will deal the election cases. So it become another difficult way also. So sometimes people have to be a bit look at it in a serious issue that South Sudan in 2010, when Sudan went to war, when they went for election, there was a lot of cases in South Sudan. It had brought a lot of issues. It had brought a lot of rebellion in Afanal, had a lot of issues. So that's what I want to say. Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you very much, James. And I think you made very important points. But that takes me to Dr. Sarah. Sarah, you remember the 4 critical deliverables of the interim government. And one of them, as you said rightly, was the permanent constitution. And therefore, this brings me to the question. Because I'm trying to link it up with when you said, is it possible for the people of South Sudan to come up with an interim or arrangement or certain minimum reform, electoral reforms that then would allow them to go to elections. From where you sit, because as a lawyer and an advocate, do you think this could be a plausible option for the country? That they could have a special purpose vehicle arrangement just for the elections, bring in to power a regime that is elected by the people of South Sudan, then of course then probably as part of their deliverables, then bring in now a constitution, because we know that constitution making is a long process, sometimes requires so much resources and national and local discussions, consensus being made. So to what extent do you think that this in interim or an arrangement like the sort of minimum reforms could go into bringing in a new regime to power? That's the first question I'm asking. And then the second question I'm asking is, remember again, census was discussed, and other legal reforms. Then how then do you fit it into this a new arrangement? Because then you can't, if it is census, you have to do a full census. So there can't be a minimum census for the purpose of the elections. How then, what can the people of South Sudan consider in terms of having the elections done within the context of the so-called special purpose vehicle arrangement under the minimum reform framework? Over to you, Sarah. Hear me? James or Sarah, could you confirm if you can hear me?
Marcos. Hello?
Yes, James. Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you.
All right. It seems like I can't.
Okay. Well,
Sarah, can you
yes,
confirm?
what I want to say about the. Oh,
So I think we're having a
I think you
network.
talk about the legal. Yeah, let me say it, you talk about the legal minimum legal reform. If
Yes.
it could be possible in South, if it could be possible in South Sudan for the election to be conducted. If this is depend on the political will of the leadership that is in the country, and now the strong the civil society is. How are they going to engage the leadership of this country? How are they going to engage other stakeholders? The churches have to come up with a minimum reform. And I used to lobby actually for minimum reform by saying, okay, if the permanent constitution is not going to be completed, because really the constitution making process is a very important for the integrity of election. But I was saying, okay, if it is difficult and government now say now many to
Marcus, I
implement,
don't
how many for
know
people to go
whose
for.
internet is a problem.
Are you getting me?
Yes, I got you, James.
Yes, I was talking about the constitution is very important, but we can go for minimum reform by saying, okay, the current constitution, we can amend it and lay down a rule for election, lay down some procedure on election, how are we going for election, which system are we going to do, and then ask people is still backing the permanent constitution. So it depends on the political will and also how strong the other stakeholders be able to mobilize to convene the political elite, convene the leaders, that the election is not to punish them, but election to put the country in a right direction, to bring development and all these things. It's not for them to be punished when their people are for election. If people are able to convene and then they are able to accept for the minimum reform, it can happen. It's not difficult. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know whether Dr. Sarah is able to speak now, but if she's still setting up internet issues, I wanted to come back to you, James, on the question of reforms, and especially speaking on political party registration regime. Because then, political parties play a very critical role, largely in terms of plurality of views, plurality of options. Where are we in South Sudan with the legal instruments that are supposed to help in the political parties and registration of such parties? James.
Okay, Marcus. Actually, in 2023, in November, the political party council was constituted, and they took the oath in December. In December. Then they started the work they're supposed to do. They registered some party. The issue was some party refused to be registered in 2024 because of the registration fee. The political party council act, they went and created the registration fee at the higher side, which they said you apply for registration of $50,000 per party, plus the collection of certificate 25,000, all 75,000. And the most of the bigger party, they refused. They said, no, we're in the law that you are going to be registered with $75,000. Then there was some, they went for conference, they went and they say they are not going to register. But the political parties, they went ahead and start registering, and now they are saying they have almost 17 parties are registered already, and they are ready for if the election is conducted today. And that is how the situation in the country. The legal framework of the party council is there, the body is there, and everything is there. And they say they are already registering the what. But there are manipulation also. That is where also we talk about some leaders. There are manipulation within the political party, because you cannot come up with a high fee and you start registering and you say, and there is law say the registration should happen within 6 months before election. But you cannot start saying I'm registering political parties and election is going within 2 months or 3 months. And the law said maybe 6 months. You have to register the political party. Again, there is manipulation there, because there are bigger parties like the ruling party have resources. The other party doesn't have resources. So this is manipulation by kicking out and deny the democracy and election to other leaders. So that is the challenge also. Okay, back to you, Marcus.
Feel free to engage with the discussions. You can write your comments and your questions in the chat. And of course, I've taken note of some of the observations that are coming up. The people of South Sudan are more than ready for the election, but many things hinder their participation, such as the question of the constitutional making process, lack of political will, and institutional reform, and many other things. So we take note of your comments. Please keep them coming. If you have questions, please, you could write them. We can be able to address them. But let me come back to James. And for our viewers, I think we are experiencing slow internet for our colleagues in Uganda. So please bear with us when they are slow in terms of responding to our questions. They're trying to sort that out. But James, back to you. In terms of update status, where are we as a country? Where are you as a country with census? And what is the situation like for the National Elections Commission? Are they ready for the elections? And the other part is comment on the resources. Are they fully funded? Do you think enough resources have been put aside to assist the commission to prepare adequately for these elections that are coming up in 2026? James.
Thank you, Marcos. Thank you again. When we look at the census in South Sudan, there is also a delay in the census and making of constitution. Because the timely conduct of election is a cornerstone of the anti-democratic system. Yet various institutions and legal bottleneck can significantly impede this process. One, understanding the root cause of this delay is crucial for fostering the electoral framework. First, the constitution making process is the integral of election. When there are ongoing contentious discussion about constitutional reform, it can create a state of uncertainty. It can create a problem that delay electoral schedule because we don't have a constitution. But if there are contentious issues, there is a lot of things going to happen. If there is a poor defined constitutional framework, it can lead also to the dispute. The over election process and eligibility criteria delay the election further. And it is essential for a stakeholder to engage in a transparency and inclusive constitution making. And when you look at the census, another significant issues that need to be tackled. An update and accurate census is vital for the representation in the election. Without census, how are you going to be represented in election? How are you going to demarcate the constituencies? It informs the allocation of the electoral district and ensure all the citizens are adequately represented. But when you look now in South Sudan, the census is not conducted. And we are talking of going for election in 2026 as it was extended. How are we going for election now? When you look at the National Election Commission, until now they did not even start the process of registration of the voter. It's now coming to the rainy season. The opposites in all 10 states was not reconstituted because they're supposed to reconstitute almost for 10 states, the High Election Committee. I understand the 7 has been reconstituted. There is 3 still, and then the 3 administrative area, which is not in the legal framework of election. How are they going to manage it? It's become an issue also. The composition of the election commission is also worrying people because the composition of the election commission is composed of political parties which are not going to be independent body because they say, oh, the chairperson is from this party, the deputy is from this party and this party. How can I be independent? How can I be to make sure that the election is held accountable and fair, credible if I'm coming from certain party? Is another problem. The composition also of representative is not well defined. The percentage of gender is not captured. When you look at the other state which was reconstituted, you will see there are now many women there was put in the commission. When you look at the commission in Juba also, there is only few women. The 35% people talk about has not been fulfilled in the electoral body that was reconstituted. They also the representative of disabled, the representative of youth, the representative of others is not in the electoral body. So the electoral body actually, people said, is been reconstituted and they are going to do the work, but there is question already. There is question already how this electoral body is going to be. What I want to say, lastly, electoral commission reform play a crucial role in ensuring timely election. An electoral commission that has independency, resources, clear method can struggle for to execute its responsibility effectively. In many instances, political interference and inadequate funding can hinder its ability to prepare for conduct election and reform and strengthen electoral commission. So all those, and when you look at the election commission in South Sudan, I think they are not also well funded. Last year they got some funding, but I don't know this year. They are not well funded. They are not equipped. The budget that they put last year is almost a lot. You know, South Sudan election is a very expensive election actually in the world, because the budget that the election commission has put down was $233 million for the election conduction, because they look at the operation of the area, they look at accessibility, and most of the material are going to be ply and all these things. So, in summary, we have to address the institutional and legal bottlenecks to timely election, require concert effort in the area of constitutional reform. I talk about reform on issue of coming up of amending the current constitution. If we are not able to go for permanent constitution, our term is not enough, as I'm seeing now. 2026 is just next year. And until now, the constitution has not been met. Mean again, if we are sticking of the permanent constitution, this election and this delay tactic from the political elite is going to happen, and it's going again to keep the election to another year. So I think South Sudan and the civil society should come up very clearly and pressurize the leadership to come up with alternative minimum reform of election, and also the constitutional amendment. So thank you, Marcus. Back to you.
Thank you, James. I think that those are well presented. Dr. Sarah, I don't know whether you can hear me now. Welcome back. We lost you for a minute.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Welcome back. So you found us having a discussion around the Constitution, and part of the deliverables for the interim regime in Juba was to deliver permanent constitution, and then of course also to then conduct these elections. And earlier on we were exploring a possibility of minimum amendments or reforms or provisions that could be what you'd call like a special purpose vehicle for these elections to occur. So that then we can address the questions around the constitution, address the questions around political party regime, address the questions around census, but also unification of the army in Juba. Therefore, this is my question to you, Dr. Sarah, because I also know that you are well versed with constitutional making processes and legal issues. Do you think this is something that can be done within the time frame of 1 year that is left? And how and what can they do to meet?
No country.
Sorry.
Yeah, no country can make a credible constitution within 1 year. A constitution is a grand norm or the big law of the land. It needs prostitution should capture values, wishes, views, and ideas of the grassroots people, not the political done to enact a constitution in a rushed manner. It is about 3 years because you need time to gather views from the people, make a draft constitution, then enact a constituent assembly or have parliament constitute itself into a constituent assembly to criticize, critique and adopt clauses that should form the constitution. So given that the interim leadership has wasted 10 years with no actionable program in preparation for elections, the people of South Sudan need to formulate what I would call a minimum agenda for all a minimum they need to conduct elections. That Elections Act, and then practically do the registration and the legal framework for political parties. The other law they need urgently is for the electoral commission, then it's elections. But otherwise, you cannot the constitution in a rushed manner, and that would be catastrophic in the end. They can only amend a few clauses in the old constitution, the draft constitution, but they cannot make a new constitution. There is no time. So they need to pick in the minimum agenda what are critical areas that are needed. So that dialogue needs to happen. Marcus, John, what is it that is needed in preparation for elections? So do a baseline, then answer to these questions in terms of what is needed to conduct elections. The rest of the government after elections are conducted.
Thank you, Dr. Sarah. I think we have we struggle to hear part
Marcus,
of
can you
your
hear
last.
me?
Yes, I can hear you, but you're also breaking at the same time. But we've been able to get the gist of your argument, and of course, your submission that the constitutional making process should be rushed, and therefore part of the considerations that Juba should make is to probably see what clauses and articles in the constitution could be amended for the purposes of these elections. I think that's something that I will come back to. But James, I don't know whether James is here. James, yes. James, it's good. I think you've had the submission from Dr. Sarah, and one of the things she's said and emphasized on the rushing of the constitution making process. And of course, that perhaps what we may want to consider as a country is to look at what are some of the critical reforms that must be put in place in the constitution, together with attendant electoral law amendments as special purpose vehicles towards 2026 deadline. Would this then sound well with the people of South Sudan? And I'm tying this to what the comments have come from, because I can read the comments here. the level of corruption in those institutions. So someone is accusing some of those governance institutions is enormous. Now, there is also a question of no independence of the commission. So, do you think that these piecemeal amendments and the so-called special purpose vehicle reforms could somehow sit well with the people of South Sudan? Over to you, James.
Thank you, Marcos. When we talk about the amendment and the rushing of the constitution, as it was said by Dr. Sarah, I think it depends on I think there are mixed reaction. And the mixed reaction is like, okay, some people will say, okay, let's go for the constitution making process and we can make it and we can go for election. There are some which I don't know there are constitution making process going on in the country. There are some people even not aware. There are some people which are saying it's not possible now. We go for constitution making. We cannot write the constitution, and which can bring another confusion again. And this is all the tactic from the leaders to confuse the making process, because in 2011, when South Sudan was going for independence, the current constitution, the transitional constitution, was in a rush. Some people sit somewhere, they make it in rush. They gave a lot of power to the president. They make a lot of. It was in rush, and then it was signed actually the day the declaration of election. I mean, declaration of independence of South Sudan. That is the time it was signed there to become the constitution. Because people say, "Oh, we cannot go for independence without constitution." So again, that is the message now South Sudan want to go for, by saying, okay, let's finish the constitution so that we go for election. They started to election. Why? It's because these leaders again want to confuse, because when we go for right and they sit there and then people demand election, then again their idea will prevail instead of the citizen demand, because this is done in a rush. So that is their idea that Dr. Sarah said that we should not rush the constitution. Let us do it, and we let us capture the opinion of people. And that is why the mixed reaction came in. Also, Sudan is demanding for federalism. It's still the federalism need a lot of discussion, need a lot of insight, need a lot of research, need a lot of awareness, a lot of civic education to the people. What do they want really? And how do people come together? Because we people should not say we need federalism and you don't know which type of federalism are you going to do. Are you going for cooperative? Are you going for devolution of power? Are you going for a mix? It's not, this thing need time. It's not a time of rush and saying, oh, let us do it because of election. It is a time for South Sudan to come up openly and look outside of the box and say, no, we are tired of this current leader. If it is because of constitution, let us go and amend the current, reform some of the law, amend some of the chapter, and then we go for election using the transitional constitutional of South Sudan. And that can make the lead actual for us to go for election. But if people are trying to say, let's wait for permanent constitution, that will take time. And I know will be in rush, which will mess up again the country as it is. And we know the constitution is made to make peace among the community, to unite the people, to divide power, resources, and all the things. So there is really a mixed reaction, because there are some South Sudan which doesn't know there is constitution. There are South Sudan which doesn't know what is the constitution, and there are some which really want the constitution to be done so that people go for election. And that is what I want to say. Thank you, Marcus.
Interesting discussions there and insights from the ground. So, Sarah, if you've listened to James and also listening to the comments from our listeners, and James also spoke about the independence of the Electoral Commission in a country like South Sudan that is has the potential of turning very volatile when a bad elections take place. So the question we need to ask, I'm asking you therefore, is it possible to just have these elections as scheduled in 2026 if we have taken into account those minimum reforms, or would you rather we have as much time as we need, even the 10-year period, if you will, and then we put all the structures required for elections to take place? Because there are those who are arguing that those minimum reforms within the context of a corrupt environment, in the context of elite capture, in a context of resource constraints, we risk uh, making these elections not respond to the needs of the people. It is not the immediate. It's not the immediate need. They want a peaceful country. I don't know what your comments would be, Dr. Sarah. Sarah, if you can hear me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marcus. And I hear James and the challenge of this contradicting. UPD fact, I have used both my personal interking. I think internet has. Marcus, can you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So I was saying that what South Sudan needs is a national conference. A national conference where all stakeholders, state and non-state, sit in one room and agree on the way forward. Because if we talk now that some people prefer to have a constitution before elections, others prefer to go for elections and constitution after, you cannot reach consensus unless all these two sides are in one room. So if it was possible, if there are any actors that could support a national conference for South Sudan, and this national conference would come up with a way forward, a clear way forward. Do we go for the constitution? What is the time period? Do we just enact necessary laws and prepare for elections? What is the time period and who is the responsible person? So what South Sudan needs is a national conference, maybe for 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month, so that the people collectively agree on the way forward for South Sudan. If you leave these decisions in the hands of political actors, they have let down the country 4 times. So are you then going to trust 4 people who have let down the country 4 times with the 5th postponement of elections? And you think they are going to deliver miracles? Already 1 year is half done. The country, the elections were postponed for 2 years. Half year is done. What is being done? So it is important for South Sudan to have a national conference to agree and come up with a minimum agenda to establish a legitimate government. And that minimum agenda should be supervised with responsible persons, with the international community, with election observers like EHON and AFIONET, and make sure that whatever time in preparation for elections, so for Sudan to realize democracy and have a legitimate government that can be implemented. I thank you.
Thank you. I think that the call for a national conference is quite loud. A national conference that would then discuss and agree on what form of reforms would then be required at the least for the elections. Now that takes me to the question to both you, Sarah, and James. But I'll start with James. Do you think 2026 December is realistic, given what is at stake for these elections? Do you think 2026 is feasible, realistic, and can be done? James?
Thank you, Marcus. That is a very good question. Actually, holding the election in 2026 can be feasible, can be well, can be okay, but provided that the specific benchmark are achieved. If it is connected with the constitution making process should be completed on time. 2, the unification of forces must be done. 3, the conduct of population census to make sure that the population, the constituency marking, the duplication of border and all, the registration of voters is done. If the political will have this, I think we can go for election. But there are a lot of challenges now, Marcus.
Thank you.
I don't know, really, I used to ask myself, holding the election in 2026, can really South Sudan go for election with this crisis? When you look now at the country, there are many locations which is not accessible. How can you do the registration in those areas, border registration? People now are in water, are in what, because of this fighting going on. How can you do the registration? And now today is already going to the middle of the year. Mean that we remain was 1 year and a half. And this 1 year and a half, when you look at the constitution, constitution making process timetable, they have 18 months. They put 18 months to complete the constitution. So really become a mixed question. It can happen and it cannot happen in many ways, unless the political will come in to achieve what is needed for us to go for election. Because doing civic education and border education is really a very important benchmark for the election, for the conduct of election. But now, how are you going to do it without security? The consumption, the security matter, the corruption within the system, lack of accountability, transparency, political manipulation in South Sudan, and it becomes really an issue. Even the election legal framework need to be amended again, because it does not encompass some of the state, and also it should meet the international standard of fairness and transparency in the public trust. Because when you are doing the election, either you build the trust, the public trust, or you destroy the public trust. So it's really is a question that need to be looked at, and people have to make a research. Either really South Sudan will go for election in 2026, because the leadership has already created the situation that make people not to go for election. And that's what they want. What Sarah said, Dr. Sarah said, that people have to sit down in a room and discuss and come up with a conclusion is very important. But also it depends on the country political. Most of the South Sudanese are very slippery. They can agree something today, but tomorrow they are doing different. They can agree at daytime, but at nighttime they are doing a different thing. Especially when the civil society themselves are challenging them. They will talk nicely during the day, but at night in their community they are talking different things. So the South Sudan become very much complicated with the issue. Now, if the civil society was really enough, transparent, and other stakeholders, they could even bring the political elite on the table. But they themselves, they do a dirty politics at night. So that is the issue here. So election really is a very important and also a crucial measure, but we should take a disband armed group. This whole armed group that's going in South Sudan and what, and promote the peaceful coexistence among community. And that's where the time people will actually will be able to go for election. But this issue of armed group, this issue of movement creating, you say today, some people has created a movement somewhere, they have appointed the leader. You see tomorrow, some people sitting in Nairobi, they create the movement, they appoint their leaders, and become a confusing issue. And this crisis, yeah, some people use it as promoting themselves and become leaders in the country. They take that shortcut. So for me, the election can be done if people sat down and said, enough is enough. Let us go this way. But if they don't sit down, feasibility of the election in 2026 is not clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. I think again you make a very clear direction that things must be done to meet the 2026 deadline. But Sarah, what is your take? Do you think 2026, from an outsider's point of view, and also coming to the realization that a number of those transitional deliverables haven't been done, do you think 2026 is realistic for these elections?
I want to agree with James that if there was political commitment, it would be possible. But the problem is that we are trusting the same group. The people of South Sudan are on the mercy of the same group that has failed to transit for more than 10 years. It's like, wishing to change something, but you keep doing the same thing every day. This group has intentionally failed to transit for over 10 years. It's the same group that we are saying this time they will do miracles. Elections were postponed towards the end of last year. What is being done in the 6 months of postponement? Is there any action being done that would show that the team now is seriously preparing for elections? Because in November, it will be 1 year gone. Then we shall remain with 1 year towards the next postponement. What is being done? Who is responsible? Where are the people to hold these leaders accountable? Once you don't have that mechanism of responsibility and accountability, South Sudan will not have elections delivered by the same group of people that have intentionally kept themselves in power without legitimacy. They will not deliver elections. So we cannot keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. The people of South Sudan, it is now 6 months. The civil society leaders like James should call for a national conference to establish an accountability mechanism to the duty bearers and say, you postponed elections in November. What are you doing to make sure that there is no postponement? Now, before the year ends, if there is no action being done, forget the elections. We need to do something different. If James, you were to tell us from the last postponement, what is being done to make sure that elections are held this time? Is there any 1 or 2 actions being done? And what is pending? And who is responsible? And where the people hold these people accountable? Once you don't have that mechanism, we shall reach another November 2026, and then elections will be postponed again. It will be the same cycle of a failed transition in South Sudan, a failed legitimacy for the leadership of Salva Kiir and group, and a contested sovereignty of the people. So what is being done so far after the postponement? Can we go into that?
I think that's a good question, Dr. Sarah, which then sets up a status update, James. These elections were postponed yet again, and in that postponement notice, reasons were advanced. So I don't know if you can take a minute, James, or so to tell us, where we are as of now in terms of those agreements. That is number one. But also, if you look at, there's a question that has been asked by one of our listeners. Amending the current constitution, will the regime agree on the removal of Article 1, James, where the president has been given absolute power? And according to this listener, this is, according to him or her, this is where the problem lies. So, James, as you make your submissions, please also tackle this particular question on Article 1 of the Constitution. Over to you, James.
Thank you, Marcus. I think Dr. Sarah talked a lot about why people are delaying the election. We are keeping those leaders into power for long, and they will not go anywhere. This is the same cycle of the leaders and all the thing. And really, that is what happened in South Sudan. Because when you look at the appointment of the official within the government, it's recycling. The ministers have been recycled. There are some who was in a ministerial post since 2005. But the question is, when we talk about election, that for civil society to sit down, come for the convention, discuss, pressurize the leaders, and so that they accept for people to go for election. Yes, most of civil society are trying. I can say they are trying. The last conference they did, and they engaged the leaders before the amendment, before the extension of the roadmap. Now they are planning for convention on CTR and CRA, also to engage the leader how to implement this activity. But the question in South Sudan is the political will and the tactic these people are using is really very complicated. As I told you now, the first vice president, which is the second in command, is at the house arrest. And this issue was created is not because there was some issues and all these things. This is the creation is a tactic of delayment in South Sudan, a tactic of delayment. Tomorrow you will see them, they will say, okay, there is war in Juba. They will delay like this, they will delay. The next day thing are coming, they will create crisis from nowhere by begging some rumors in the social media what they created, and then they say, oh, war is there, we are fighting, there is now election. And this is the issue in South Sudan. Really, South Sudan are in a mess. These leaders, they want to keep themselves in power because these leaders have really looted the resources of this country, and they don't want to come out. Because if they come out of power during the election, most of them, and when you look at the parliament, because most of the law also, even the legal framework or even through parliament, when you look at the composition of the parliament, these are all appointees. These are not elected representative of people. So do you think really those leaders and those parliament can pass a law that can eliminate them out from that parliament? Because they know very well those people, when they go for the community election, most of them, I don't think maybe 2-3 will come back, but all this will not come back to the parliament. So they are happy. And when there is a proposition that We delay the election, they pass it in even in hour. There's now discussion. So it becomes even a bit complicated. But as a civil society, other churches, church leader, other what really they have to sit down and come up. I can say the South Sudan civil society, they are not strong like other civil society in Africa. Because I'm not saying they should not be divided, but the idea should flow as one. You could be doing on this, and this one could working on this, but let us move together in a one direction, in one idea. But when you look at civil society of South Sudan, really, you see them in a one place at daytime, but at the daytime, everybody is talking a different history. So that is the big question in South Sudan. The civil society really need to come together. They want to look. Let them look at the mirror. What they are doing is really reflecting what the country needs. The church leaders, what they are doing is really reflecting the country, what the country needs. Because when you look even at the church leaders in South Sudan, they are divided according to the tribal leaders, the tribal entity. You go, you say there is a church of Chuluk somewhere in the town, church of Denka somewhere, church of Nuer somewhere, and that is the city. How can you do the church in the city according to tribal line? Can these churches really unite South Sudanese? They will not. They will divide South Sudan more. And when those leaders, they do their politics in the church, because everybody go to the church where his tribe is, and they pick politics there. So it becomes tricky also from the stakeholders how to unite together. When you look at other like trade union and what again is a problem. You look at the women also is a problem. So for civil society actually in South Sudan, I think it needs the regional civil society to work together with the civil society in South Sudan, and how they will move and make sure that they implement and they did something good in the country. They move with the one voice. We are not talking, don't do your activity. We are not talking, don't do your politics. But if it comes to the matter of the country, let's move it at one, not in a different direction. And you know, in South Sudan also, this issue of poverty, Sarah, let me tell you, this issue of poverty is another one. Because the poverty in the South Sudan is too much. So when the politician is giving you a pin, you talk the language of those positions. Do you know now, like, for example, in the country, almost 1 year, there is no payment. So what do we expect from these people? Poverty is another one that is preventing the democracy and election in this country, and good governance is one of the things. Tribalism is one of the things. So really, we are in a mess. Thank you.
Thanks, James. And I think we'll come back to as a way forward. And I don't know whether the question about Article 1 of the Constitution, whether you could comment on it. It's been asked by one of our listeners, because according to him or her, that's where the problem is, where the president has been given absolute power. Do you think it is something that would be of interest to the constitutional?
Okay. Yes. Okay, Moscow. I think this Article 1, which giving the president more power, and that's why I talked before that the transitional constitution of South Sudan was made in rush, and was made for people to go for independence, and it was done at night, and then completed at night, and in the morning, South Sudan was going for independent country. So some people, they said somewhere, they said this constitution, when we give the president more power, will favor us. Some of them fall victim in 2013 in this because of this constitution. So it's a constitution that was made in right. And that's why people are looking at permanent constitution now to make sure that the power of the president, the distribution of power, the distribution between the state, between and the national, how to protect those power should be done. Because the removal now, I don't think if these people will agree. Because the parliament here is the rubber stamp. When you talk about removing the power of the president at this stage, this is the parliament of rubber stamp. They can rubber stamp it, it can be met. And you know, they can go and will return back to the parliament and they can do it. They can be proud because the poverty also is another one. So it becomes, but that's why we are talking about permanent constitution to make the real constitution of South Sudan where the power of the president is well laid down, the power of the national, the power at the state level, and also for South Sudan to decide either they are going to which type of level of the government, the national, the state, the county, the Payam, or they want to say like Kenya went for two level of government, which is the national and the county. South African went for 4 or 3. So South Sudan now we have a lot. So it is them to decide. And how those powers are going to be protected. Now the president have a power to remove the elected position. If you are elected governor, he has the power to remove you. If you are elected parliamentarian, he have a power to remove you. So even the election we are talking about, people go to with the amendment or we amend the constitution without removing the Article 1 is a fake election because the president will come back and say, you did not do my work. It's removing the what. That is what is there in the constitution. Whether you are elected or not, the president have a right to remove you. And that is what is in the current constitution of South Sudan. Thank you.
That is interesting, that if you're elected or not elected, the president can remove you. Anyway, so guys
Yes.
who are listening, please feel free to interact with our speakers. You could also share in your ideas. I think there's someone is agreeing with Dr. Sarah that there's need for us to have enough time in making a constitution. I think James has just confirmed that the South Sudan's constitution was done at night and finished at night. So I think learning from that experience of what happened last time, there's need for the country to take good time in making its constitution. But as we move forward, we're about to wind up, and thank you all who are listening. But I wanted to move to the next level, Dr. Sarah. You mentioned the role of institutions and bodies outside South Sudan, and I want to just focus on two institutions. One is focus on citizen observers like ourselves, but also regional bodies like, let's say, the East African Community and IGAD, and how such bodies can also. What do you see as their fundamental role in supporting South Sudanese people to have these elections in 2026? Over to you, Dr. Sarah.
Thank you, Marcus. And maybe before I come to this question, I want to briefly, give a rejoinder at what James shared on the challenges, what he thinks are the challenges of democracy or democratization in South Sudan. And he highlighted 3 important issues. One is poverty, which disempowers people and takes away their capacity to hold the leaders accountable because it's easy to manipulate them. The second challenge he mentioned was tribalism and how it has played, including maintaining the factions in the military and in the transition government of South Sudan. And the third aspect was divisions in civil society and churches, and where he thought that even when they say one thing in the day, they can change in the night. Also twisted around 1 and 2 tribalism and maybe poverty in favor of money. So I think, one, we have a problem to the extent that the transition leaders of South Sudan are too comfortable and they are not yet being pushed out of their comfort zone to conduct elections. And maybe they think they might not win the elections. So that's why they are playing games around preparation for elections and enjoying comfort because of disempowered citizenry that cannot demand for elections. So the solution for all this is a national dialogue. Let's push for the national conference. It can take a month. Let people discuss, and let's have a good team that will aggregate an action plan for elections in South Sudan with the responsible centers and people to follow. There is an excuse of the Constitution and Article 1. If we did, because it's important to know that the people of South Sudan first had a say on how they want to be governed in a referendum. That was the last time, a referendum for independence, for secession. That is the last time for the South Sudan to have a say on how they want to be governed. So for this time, there is no consensus. Whereas the Comprehensive Peace Agreement should have been a uniting document for consensus, it was violated through failure to hold elections in 4 years and endless extensions and numerous agreements that have followed. So there is no governing consensus in South Sudan. That's why you see that everybody's wish is pushing their own selfish agenda. Riek Machar has his own views, the first vice president. Salva Kiir and group have their own views, and they managed to subdue Riek Machar with the support from Uganda. There is no governing consensus in South Sudan. So how do we obtain minimum consensus with a minimum agenda for democratization of South Sudan? That is the question on table. So when you ask me the role of institutions like civil society, observer networks, regional bodies, these bodies should help South Sudan people to generate consensus with a minimum agenda for elections. Unless we obtain this minimum agenda and minimum consensus with responsibility centers and timelines. If Marcus, you are in charge of a register and you have 6 months to produce a national register, there should be somebody to ask you, where is this national register in 6 months? If James is in charge of registering political parties and unification of the army, there should be somebody to say, it is 6 months. James, can you give us a report? Where is the process of unification of the army? Where is the process of registering political parties? Unless we have this minimum consensus, clear responsibility centers, the politicians who are already in places of comfort and are not shaken by citizen pressure, they will not deliver elections. That is my view and opinion, that the democracy works on forces of supply and demand, and we should have responsibility centers to hold the people accountable.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Sarah. James, do you want to come in?
I want to add some of the challenges. She was talking, what is the challenges actually preventing the election and democracy in South Sudan. One of it, which can stand in the forefront, is the corruption in South Sudan. These challenges actually invaded the political arena of the nation. The substantial, most of the revenue of the government, particularly the oil, is siphoned off through the corruption project. All the public are remaining with nothing. There is no infrastructure, there is nothing, and Also, there are now information, underfunding project. This corruption really enrich and select few and erode those who eroded the public, and this eroded the public trust in the government institution. And these individuals who siphon and corrupt, these are the people which are proposed with a lot of money, and they use this money to buy people to their side. If you are the harm group today, they will use those money to buy the harm group to them, to use them. The another challenge is the weak governance structure in South Sudan. Since South Sudan got independent, there was the legal structure of the government really was weak, and it's still today weak. People try to strengthen, to reform, but there are a lot of resistance. Rule of law is really a problem also. So all this accountability become a mechanism allow the continual mismanagement. And you see, all the resources are mismanaged. There are failure to address the present need and all. These are challenges to the democracy in the country. The ongoing conflict, violence within the country, both internally, intercommunal tension, pose a significant barrier to the democratic governance. Armed group and militia also has also challenges the authority of the government. So this thing create mistrust between the citizen, the government, the armed group, the militias or whatever. There are mistrust actually between people of South Sudan, between the community to community leadership and all, and the government and the community, the citizen and all. There is this mistrust, and this mistrust create wider gap between the leader, the citizen. Now there is now this discussion can bring people down and discuss, because the government does not trust the citizen and the citizen does not trust the government. So it becomes an issue for them to pressurize the citizen so that they should not come up. Also, they had the information, because information is the power. And if you don't know what is going on in the country, you will not be able to advocate for whatever people need. And all these factors actually lead to the lack of representation, widespread of public mistrust. South Sudanese citizens witnesses the failure of their government to deliver the promise of the development and security. Their faith in democratic process diminish. This cycle of corruption, weak governance, and violence, and you see, even the faith in democracy has diminished also. What is democracy? We are electing people which still come and loot this country. Like Patrick Ramuma said, that you cannot elect hyena to come and guide the God. How can you elect hyena to be the leader of the God, to guide them at night? They will still eat those ones. So that is one of the challenge. Some of the challenges I am going to get forward, which is preventing the democracy in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're coming to the end of our conversation. Once again, just inviting our listeners to continue engaging with our speakers through the chat, but also requesting now, before I come to the concluding remarks and action points that we have agreed, probably just to give Dr. Sarah Birete a minute, and also James a minute, as a way of closing. What then do you think should be done now? Just one or two things that you think should be done now to shape the conversation forward. So I start with you, Dr. Sarah Birete, then James, you can come in. Over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you so much. So we have a saying in Uganda of, saying you must shake the expensive tables. When James was talking about the challenges of corruption, armed militia, breakdown of rule of law, weak governance structures, and of course the question of trust, These are symptoms that are manifesting from the failed leadership, a failed legitimacy, a failed transition. And the corruption and other ills is what is making the political leadership comfortable. It's actually, for lack of a better word, we wouldn't be calling them leaders. Most of these people are dealers. They're just making money. They are too comfortable. When we were in South Sudan, the security forces had not been paid for 11 months. The army was staging roadblocks to collect money for their upkeep. And the government was busy buying new SAF cars. So they have their own priorities. They are too comfortable. And unless the tables they are seated on are shaken, they will not deliver the democracy that you expect. They will not. So that's the more reason, the question of trust. That's the more reason the international community needs to join the call. But the call must come from civil society, the call for the conference. The call for a new minimum agenda must come from, the civil society and the people. Then the international community should guarantee through ensuring that there is a neutral convener for Sudan to be able to come up with a minimum agenda and a minimum action plan for elections. The current leadership on their own, they will not deliver election. That is my formed opinion and conclusion, that we need external forces, we need influence for elections to take place, and we need a demand from the people, a serious demand that is citizen driven, that shakes the leaders toward the elections. That is my conclusion, Marcus. I don't think I have anything new to add.
Thank you very much. That is well said. Over to you, James.
Thank you, thank you. Actually, as you look at South Sudan, it's a very complex context. It has a complex context because the context from country to country differ, and the behavior of the people differ. So, what I want to say, to break this cycle, the equitable and democratic society, the actionable step must be taken by both individual or when our civil society as a group. And one critical step to be prioritized is a civic education that will empower the citizen. Because if the citizens are not empowered, they will not have a chance to demand their right. So I think the civil society have to make sure that they do a civic education and engagement, advocacy, and engage with those leaders also to make sure the accountability and transparency is taken into consideration. Engaging citizens will lead the politician leader actually, because when they are pressurized by the community, they will also make sure that, oh, if we don't do this, mean that these people will be thrown out of the way. So giving information to the citizen is very important. Also pressurizing the government by civil society and stakeholders like churches to implement the current peace agreement, to come to implement this peace agreement, and also to pressurize the government to release the first vice president, because it's part and partial of the peace agreement. Without him, because in the peace agreement is mentioned by name, it's not even mentioned by party. Two of them, the president and the vice president, was mentioned in the agreement. One of the crucial for the implementation of this peace agreement for us to go for democratic election in South Sudan. So that's what I want to say. South Sudan, they have to be visible, they have to be worked hard and see their country move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And once again, a big thank you to our...
Thank you much.
Thank you. Just once again to thank you, James, and to thank you, Dr. Sarah, for such wonderful insights, and thanks to our listeners who have continued to engage with the content. But as we conclude, these are some of the things that we have discussed today and largely agreed on. One, that to ensure that South Sudan holds credible elections, not just elections, but credible elections in 2026, key steps need to be taken with clearly assigned responsibilities across various stakeholders. Because as we know, elections is not only the responsibility of either parliament or the executive or judiciary, but also it's a multi-sectoral exercise. So one, there's need to hold a national dialogue sort of meeting. So this meeting then is supposed to arrive at a consensus on the questions around electoral reforms that must be done, on the kind of legal infrastructure that is needed, and agree on some of those things, because that then would then reduce tension and build trust. So I think, again, this is the question of the faith organizations, traditional leaders within South Sudan should be involved, the president should be involved, and civil society organizations should be involved. So that's the first action point that I think we have largely discussed. So this National Dialogue or Consensus Forum would, among other things, even agree on actionable timelines under which each of those things must be done. The second thing that we have discussed largely is on the need for the country to complete the national population census, and that is important because without it you can't even plan for the election. So there is need, therefore, that the National Bureau of Statistics in South Sudan should take lead, be accorded the necessary financial and capacity support it requires, and such support can even come from other agencies within the region and also within the country, the Ministry of Interior. We have also discussed some of the reforms that we would like to see on the National Elections Commission. Of course, the question around the professionalizing the commission has been raised, and of course, the other part is about funding the commission. Again, that should be the responsibility of the government through the Ministry of Finance, but also through Parliament to ensure that everything is well done. The other thing that we have discussed here is the need for strong citizen agency, because elections belong to the people of South Sudan. Elections must respond to their needs. They must feel secure in going through that process without anyone being victimized as a result of participating in that process. So there's need for the country to invest in citizen agency through information sharing, through capacity enhancement, through civic education. So that is something that, of course, again, the responsibility then becomes for the civil society organizations, becoming the National Elections Commission, coming through for to share information relating to elections in good time. The other thing is securing of international support and monitoring, because again, there's need for the country to invite and seek support of whatever nature, whether technical support, financial support from the international community, regional bodies, and other non-state actors within the region to support in building legitimacy, in ensuring that transparency is secured, and possible fraud or abuse of the electoral process sought for and avoided. So those are some of the things that we have agreed on in terms of actionable things. Moving forward, then, is that there's need for these things to be done pronto, to be done as soon as possible. And I think that national conference, that national dialogue conference, would then set the agenda for 2026 and assign responsibility within a monitoring framework, who is responsible, and what are the indicators required. For us as Afionet and EON, our plan is to continue with the conversations, continue providing the work, the platforms like these ones here, for us to be able to engage and get insights from the people. We'll be able to issue a brief and share with yourselves in our social media and other open spaces for you to interact with them. So those are some of the things that I wanted to say in conclusion. But once again, I would like to thank you very much, dear listeners, to thank the organizers from Afionet and EON for agreeing to create this platform, but also thank the panel consisting of Dr. Sarah Birete, who is the chairperson of EON, and also James Okon, who is the chairperson of Sunde, and also a member of EON. So once again, thank you very much. We'll be able to remain in conversation and support the country as it puts structures to ensure that credible elections are held in 2026. Over, and we thank you so much for participating. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Artlist.io